John Pinchbeck, local historian and author, joins us. John, can you tell us how Grantham Town came about?
Well, surprisingly, it was at the King's School. The King's School took up football and they introduced this new sport into the town in 1865. And they beat Radcliffe in the first match. It took about 10 years then before the adults took it up, and then they began to take it seriously. Grantham's team made its debut at the London Road Cricket Ground, which became their home for the following century. But of course, there was always a little bit of bad blood between the cricket club and the football club, especially when the seasons overlapped at around May time. So they got their own ground, which was on Harlexton Road, which was where the Ark car wash is now. The first match, by the way, was a friendly between Arthur Hutchinson's team, which beat the Fire Chief, Sidney Gamble's team, 4-1. And it was nothing to have a pitch which was 200 metres by 100 metres. Both teams had an umpire, not a referee in those days, and there was no limit to the number of players that could be on the field at any given time. And it was really, you could say that the club started in 1892, and when it had its first financial crisis as well. And one of the first teams to play, by the way, was a team called Liverpool. Wonder what happened to them. Of course, it was always a problem. Money was always a problem for Grantham Football Club, like many others, obviously. The first financial crisis was in 1892. That was the year after they turned semi-professional, when they found that the £16 deficit at the start of the season had leapt to a whole £22. And in 1895 the club folded and Avenue became top dogs. But the Grantham FC was revived a few years later. There was an appeal for clothing coupons to buy kit in 1945 at the end of the war, so they could start again. And 4 years later the club was on the brink of closure with a £2,500 recovery fund launched. So whenever you hear Grantham FC say they've got money troubles, it's a question of tell me the old story. Surprisingly, from 1934 right up until 1975, Grantham only had 4 managers. Harry Pringle was there from 34 for 20 years. Then we had Cyril Hatton, the ex-Queen's Park Rangers local lad. Jimmy Rayner, who was only there for a full season, but was supposedly could take the net out with one good shot. And then the legendary Terry Bly, who, well, let's face it, everybody liked Terry. Then we had a series of changes of managers. There was Bob Norris and Ronnie Harrison, and at one time it was as a pair and then as separate ones. Then in 81 came Jeff Barker from Hull. Then John Nixon, and if I'm perfectly honest, John Nixon I think is the one I like the most as a manager to get on with. One of his famous sayings was, "We're in a winning rut," and it's really annoying. And what he was getting at was, at the time, there was playing appallingly but winning all the matches, so he couldn't really make any changes. Then there was Bob Duncan, followed by another local lad, Barry Shaw. Barry had been a player with the club and a hard-working servant. He went on to manage Harrowby United afterwards. And then, of course, Martin O'Neill, who quite famously insults journalists. And I'm proud to say I'm the one he first practised on. After that, I'm afraid, I left. There was Danny Anderson, John Robertson, who'd also played for the club in Martin O'Neill's day, and there was Bob Duncan. He made a return in, when was it, about 92. But as I say, after that, I'm afraid I sort of got more interested in a different shaped ball game. I suppose we all had a favourites. I mean, I was a big fan of Chris Gardner, the goalkeeper. I thought he was superb. Always seemed to me as if he should have been playing at a higher level of football than Grantham Town. Then there was probably the one who always comes to mind as the legend was Jack McCartney. His finishing prowess is legendary and still is. And he scored 415 first-team goals in 11 seasons, and he still holds the Midland League record for the most goals in a match in 1948. He scored 8 goals in one game, and he was marked by future England manager Ron Greenwood. That was when he was playing for Bradford Park Avenue. Jack had joined Grantham in '37, and in those days the brewery, the boss of the brewery, was the chairman of the football club. So if you got a good player, he got a job at the brewery. Just as at Ransom and Miles, if you could play a good instrument, you had a job in the personnel department. As I say, he got a job with Mowbray's. Then he scored 21 times in the first 5 months. He scored 42 the following season. He got off to a slow start when they resumed after the wartime. He only scored 29 in the 45-46 seasons, although he did miss 19 matches. Then he scored 120 goals in the next 2 seasons just to make up for it. He was one of these people, if he got the ball at his toes, you know, that was it. It was a goal. I remember talking to Jack once, many years ago now, and his highlight was playing in front of 17,000 people at Boothbury Park, Hull, when England centre-half, as he was then, Neil Franklin, was marking Jack. And Jack scored the only goal of the game. He was very, very proud of that. And incidentally, he wasn't a bad cricketer. He was a prolific run scorer for Ruston and Hornsby. But that's another story.
My name is Peter Clawson. I was sports editor for the Grantham Journal from 1972-73 season for 10 years. And that was the best part of Grantham's history, when Terry Bligh was the manager and they had the best team in the country. In fact, Bobby Charlton said it was the best non-league team he'd ever seen. And they had considerable success in the FA Cup, reaching the first round proper nearly every year, and one year going to the third round where they lost 2-0 to Middlesbrough. That year they had a fantastic win over Rochdale in an away replay. And after a big argument with my editor, I went. The editor said that there was no point going because Grantham wouldn't win anyway, but I went. And when I got there, there was a lot of national press and they were all cynical about Grantham. At half-time it was 3-1 to Rochdale, and the press was so sarcastic that I lost my temper and said, right, 3-3 at the end of the match, I don't care what you say. And sure enough, 3-3 it was. And then at 3-3 my editor told me I'd got to ring him back because he wanted to put a note in the window of the journal so that the local fans would know how they got on. And he was so rude, he said, they'll never last the pace in extra time. He said, no chance. Anyway, at the end I rang up, I said, 5-3. He said, there you are, what did I tell you? I said, Grantham won. And while I was there, I was lucky to see Jack Charlton. But when I went to try and get an interview with him, this Jobsworth's commissioner wouldn't let me in the director's room. Anyway, as I was waiting to go in, the door opened and several people came out, and I saw Jack across the room and never met him in my life. So I shouted, Jack? And he said, yes. I said, can I come and have a word with you? He said, of course you can. And before the Jobsworth knew what was happening, I was talking to him and he daren't come in and throw me out. Anyway, Jack Charlton agreed with his brother Bobby that Grantham were the best non-league team he'd ever seen at that time, and he was worried. Even though Middlesbrough were top of the second division and unbeatable, he was very worried, and I just laughed and he said, you wait. And the match itself attracted the biggest crowd there'd ever been at London Road, over 6,000 people. And unfortunately Grantham lost, but they played Middlesbrough to death all through the game. Brent Horrib in particular on the right wing. There was an Irish international fullback and he just tore him to pieces. But Jack Charlton's teams always managed to win and they got 2 goals, but there you are. So that was that one. Terry's team went on and on, literally until they were all ready to retire. Most of them could easily have got into the league, the Football League, but they didn't want to. They were loyal to Terry and to Grantham. And they stayed there. And the only reason that the team went down was because they all got old at the same time and they couldn't get replacements for them. And Terry retired. I became a supporter in 1954 on the same match that Mike Bosnell played his first game. And that season, he was one of the best goal scorers I've ever had, but not the best. And that season he scored 36 goals in part of a season, and the following season he scored 51, which you can imagine is not too bad. Yeah, he was a great bloke. He was much better than the Midland League, which Grantham played in at that time, but he'd broken both his legs playing for Lincoln, who were in the second division, and therefore he couldn't really play in the league, but he was way above our standard. Hat-trick a game. But he wasn't the best goal scorer, because the best goal scorer was Jimmy Rayner, who came afterwards. And Jimmy played for Peterborough United, but he'd left Grantham to go there, and he always promised he'd come back, and he became player manager. So when he was player manager, they won the Midland League for the first time ever by 9 clear points, and he scored 66 goals in the process. One interesting game was Gainsborough, because everybody hated him and were jealous of him, and at half-time Gainsborough were beating Grantham 3-2, and Rayner hadn't scored, and they were all going, you know, rubbish and all that. Anyway, it was 8-3, and Rayner scored all 6. So that was something good. And he went on, as I said, it was the first time they'd ever won the league, and nobody ever expected them to win it. And even Terry Bligh, who got them to the Southern League Premier Division, only got runner-up. So that's how good Rayner was. And after he left Grantham, he went on to Notts County. So he didn't go down, he went up. So that was another great goal scorer. But in fairness, Nixon and Norris, Terry Bligh's two, they were wonderful. And there's no question that Terry Bligh's team was the best that Grantham ever had or ever will have, I should think. And you've only got to listen, as I say, to what the stars said. Everywhere you went, people were really pleased Grantham came, because they played football, they weren't cheats, and the big thing about them was they were comedians. I used to really be on the tails of referees, but there was a really good one from Wolverhampton, and his name was Jess Yates, and he went in at the start of the game, and he said, "I've heard about you lot, comedians." He said, "One word and you're off." And then he burst out laughing. Goalkeepers, we always had good goalkeepers as well as centre forwards, but again the best one was Chris Gardner, Terry Bligh's one. He was fantastic. He still lives at Colstrad, I think it is. And I remember one day Jeff Hurst, the World Cup hero, he managed Telford, who were supposed to be a million times better than Grantham, and for the whole match Telford literally had shooting in practice, and Chris Gardner saved the lot. And at the end of the game, all their players and our players made a line and applauded him off the field. So that's how good he was. But we also, years ago, we had a goalkeeper who used to play for Sheffield Wednesday, and his name was Ron Hewitt. And he made his name because he wouldn't go on strike back in the 50s, and he was sent to Coventry, and nobody would speak. And the game that he played after he'd been sent to Coventry, the first ball that came to him, he just let it go. And he turned around to the crowd. He says, "If you're not going to speak to me, I ain't going to save the ball." So that finished that sort of thing. Another centre forward as well that was interesting was Mike Alexander. He was not really one of Terry's great team, but he was before, and he was a really good player. And Boston United, they were playing us in the FA Cup, and what they weren't going to do to us was nobody's business. Anyway, Terry Bligh, who was a really good manager, he found out that their centre-half, Alan Davison, was slow, and Mike Alexander was very, very quick. And although Boston took the lead 1-0, Alexander then scored a hat-trick, just by the ball being lobbed over the centre-half's head and running onto it and scoring. An interesting thing about that game was my relatives, a lot of them lived at Peterborough and Boston and Stamford, and we had bets on that game, and of course they thought they were going to win easily, so they didn't. And that leads me on really to the best game I've ever seen, and that was in the 50s. I don't know if you know, but Peterborough were the team. They were supersonic, the best non-league team they'd ever been, and they used to win in the FA Cup, beating Manchester United type teams. And they came to Grantham, having beaten us 7-1 at Peterborough. And at that time, Grantham had a number of players who'd been playing in the league but were old. There was Aubrey Southwell, who played for Notts County, Johnny Little, Sheffield Wednesday, John Ramsden, who we used to call Nelly, he wouldn't thank me for that, and several others. And they all came back for the game. And again, I had lots of bets on with my Peterborough friends who were laughing. Anyway, at half-time, it's 4-0 to Grantham because of these players. 10 minutes into the second half, it's 4-3. Anyway, they were all beginning to crow, but at the end it was 7-3. Later in my time at the Journal, I became the secretary of the fundraising organisation for the Gingerbreads, and I used to do tickets for Forest. And Forest were really, really good to us. They gave us super prizes. They came and played a match with full first team. And the interesting thing there was I rang Brian Clough up, and England were playing on the same night. And I said to him, "Are you going to see England, or are you coming to Grantham?" He said, "I said I'd come to Grantham, and I'll be there." He said, "You'd want to see England when I can come and see a game like that." And although Forest beat them 6-1, it was a joy to watch. That was the great Forest team. Every week, Terry Bly and I used to have a shouting match, because he said I always put pressure on his players. But we were really, really good friends, and then we used to play sport together. He even took me to the cup final one year. But there was one particular match. I'd had a run of predicting results, and I'd got 5 of them right. And so Grantham were due to go away to Hillingdon Borough, and I predicted 4-0. And I said if Terry Bly was Brian Clough, he'd say there's no way that Hillingdon Borough can beat Grantham. Well, I didn't tell you what Terry said on the bus. It was very
not broadcastable.
No, that's right. But anyway, we went there and the result was 4-0. And I went back and I got on the bus and he looked at me and he said, "Don't you say a word." So that's the sort of relationship we have. I played tennis against him and things like that. And all the players, they were such good comedians. They used to come and sit and look over my shoulder. I had to start doing shorthand, which was a pain, because they kept reading what I was going to write about them. And they used to come and put their arm around me and say, "What you're writing about us this week, Pete?" But sadly, after that, there's a lot of things went wrong at the football club. And a big money man came in, but the money never materialised. All the good people who'd been raising the money were got rid of. Even they had Gary Mills, who'd been a Notts Forest, one of their top players with Brian Clough, and he was the manager, and he'd even got them promotion into a higher league. But it just went to pieces, and I say the money never materialised. And really, I don't think they've ever recovered. I myself managed a little team called Sleaford Dynamos, and oddly enough, several of Terry's top players we managed to get for him. The goalkeeper, one of the goalkeepers that we got was actually Mark Wallington, who went on to Leicester City. Be a really good one. But there was one called Dave Taylor, and he played for Grantham. And Dave's brother Jerry became one of Terry's main members of his team, and he played for us. We found him as well. But we challenged Terry to a game, tongue-in-cheek once, and unfortunately we won 4-0, and several of the players didn't speak to me for weeks after that.
And now we have an interview that Ian Selby conducted some time back that we thought would be appropriate for this heritage slot. Ian interviewed former Lincoln City reserve striker Mike Bosnell, who after breaking his leg signed for the Gingerbreads. Mike first played for Grantham in the November 1954 Midland League game at London Road against Scunthorpe and Lindsay United reserves, scoring a brace on his debut. Mike missed only one of the remaining games from that season, amassing 38 goals to his credit. The following year his scoring skills were even better, with another 53 strikes to his name. His final appearance at Grantham came in the Lincolnshire County Cup A final victory over Gainsborough Trinity in April 1961. Mike went on to play for Ashby Institute and Marchtown United before giving up the game to concentrate on his own building business. Mike did return to the club in August 2005 though, as part of the club's Legends Day celebrations. So here we are, over to Ian.
Mike, it's a pleasure to be here to interview you today, and it's nice to see you again after a number of years that I haven't seen you. So, Mike, I'd just like to start and ask you about your school days and your youth, and how you first got involved in football? I know as lads, we all used to go on the playing park, didn't we? And kick the leather about. So, how did you get involved?
Well, going back a long time, Ian. Going back a long time. I mean, I from school days, I always seemed to score a lot of goals. Whether I was helped or not, I don't know, but it just seemed to be something I could do. And when I was 15, Lincoln City came, and I signed for Lincoln City as part-time professional, and played for them for quite a number of years as understudy to Andy Graver, who was the great goal-scoring legend in them days. I scored a lot of goals for the reserves and things like that, and then I can't remember the year that I was playing for Lincoln against Scunthorpe, and I broke my leg and finished up in Scunthorpe Hospital for quite a few weeks, and I think Mr. Anderson, who was Lincoln City manager then, thought I was finished and put me on the list. And it sort of broke my heart, you know, but all of a sudden we had a knock at the door, the front door there, and I was still in plaster, and who should be at the door was the Grantham manager, Cyril Hatton, ex-Queen's Park Rangers manager, who was then came to Grantham to manage it. I didn't know him, and anyway I invited him, and also with him was Jack McCartney, the goal-scoring legend of Grantham Town. And they came in and they had a cup of tea, and he said to me, when I'm fit and ready, they would like to sign me for Grantham, which I thought was a joke, with a leg stuck in plaster right up to my thigh. And anyway, it gave me quite a boost. Cut a long story short, I got the leg better and trained and that, and went to Grantham and played for Grantham for 5 or 6 years, and I think I was leading goal scorer for all that time under Cyril Hatton. And I can't remember then what happened. I got an injury when I was at Grantham, and it knocked me for 6 for quite a few months, and in that time I think they got somebody else playing for the town, and I did go back and I played another season or 2 for Grantham, and but there were the best times in my life at Grantham Town. There were the people, the ground, the whole club. I've never known anybody like them at all. They were super. They were a smashing lot of people, and so were the players. And I thoroughly enjoyed the 6 or 7 years I was with them.
So, how many goals did you actually score then, Mike, for Grantham?
Well, the first year, I only played for about half a season, and I think I played about 16 games and got 36 in that particular season. And the second season I got 49. The next season was 56. Third season was 67, and the top 4th season or 5th season I was at Grantham, I got 71, which was quite a lot of goals. But and I don't know whether they've ever been broken or not at all, but it was a great time. I mean, if I had my time over again, whatever happened, I would always play for Grantham Town, because I had so much. It was wonderful, and the people of Grantham, everybody was absolutely superb. They were smashing, and it was not a very big club, but it was a great club to play for.
Mike, that was a phenomenal scoring rate. What would that average out at per game? Any rough idea?
Nearly 3. Cyril Hatton, who was then the player manager, and he played inside forward to me as I played centre forward, he used to shout on the field, "I can't believe it, another one," and things like that, you know. And we had a great time. It was a smashing club. And Jack McCartney, who was a goal-scoring legend on his own, was the trainer, and he used to stand up and shout to me, "Go on, Bosnell, put another bugger in," you know. Yeah, we had a great. It was great. It was really great. But that was a lot of goals. It really was.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about your teammates?
Well, Alan Clay was a nice chap, and he played left half or right half with John Little. Now John Little, Big John Little we called him, was about, God, I don't know how big he was, massive lad. And he had a shoe shop in the town at Grantham, John Little. It was boots and shoe, and for selling all boots and shoes. And he was a big lad, and he used to Cyril Hatton put him centre half, and nobody ever got past Big John. He was a tremendous player, really. And Alan Clay, who lived, I think, at the next village to Grantham. It was a local lad, Alan Clay, ever such a nice chap, and he was a good left half. And anybody we wanted sorting out, we used to say, Alan, number 3, number 6, and he used to sort them. But he was still a good player, but it was a bit rough. But the centre half was Little, John Little, and he had a shoe. I can't remember what it was in the town, either a shoe shop or a clothes shop. Johnny Little had, and he was a big lad. Nobody ever got past him, believe me. But they were great days. They were great days.
Right, where did your inspiration come from for playing football? You must have had an icon that you looked up to. I mean, the days that you played, it was actually before the 1966 World Cup final, and you know, before players became, as I say, icons. So who was the main inspiration for yourself?
Well, I mean, you know, the whole of my family played football. You know, my uncles were they were in the army, you know, in the wartime, and they were great footballers, better than I ever was. And but my uncle George could have been a professional any time. He was a tremendous player, and so was Pim. You know, the whole of the family seemed to play football in those days, but I was the only one who was lucky enough to earn money at it. I think, you know, but we had some great times, some really great times. If I had it all again, I'd do it again.
Right, can you just tell me a little bit more about your Lincoln City days?
Well, when I played, I was understudy to Andy Graver for quite a while, and he never got injured, so I could never get a game. This is the point. But I played once, I think it was against the Bristol City at Lincoln, when Andy was injured. But as soon as he got himself back from injury, he was straight back in, because he was a prolific goal scorer. You know, and I was only be 17 or 18 or something like that. But he was a great player, was Andy. But as I say, he only got injured that once, so I never got a game.
Mike, I'd just like to move on. I understand that you was approached by the Clareton Blues of West Ham United on one occasion.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about that?
I'm just trying to think. It's a long time ago in now. We'd been playing at Grantham at home. London Road ground, and we were playing, I can't remember now, I think it was Wisbeach, and we beat Wisbeach 6-1. I scored all 6 goals, and in the stand, unbeknown to me, was West Ham manager, and his name...
Ron Greenwood?
Ron Greenwood, that's it. Yeah, you've got me there, Ian, that's right. Ron Greenwood and his trainer or somebody, and apparently they had a word with the Grantham hierarchy. And unbeknown to me, I think they wanted that much money from it, frightened them to death. So they did get an offer of what it was. I can't quite remember now, but I had to go to and live in London, and I just started a business, and I'd got a few chaps working for me, etc. And I thought, well, I don't know. I didn't think I was good enough anyway, because I was scoring a few goals, but so it really went by the board. But I did meet them in the Saracen's Head in the High Street.
Yeah. So you didn't actually play for West Ham, but do you have any regrets then that you didn't play for them?
I would like to have gone. Yeah, I'd like to have gone. I don't think I was good enough, but I just seemed to score a few goals, and whether I would in that league or not, I don't know. But it was nice for somebody as West Ham to come and ask me if I'd go and play for them. Right. Bristol Rovers came as well.
Mike, you say that you felt that you weren't good enough, but to score goals at the phenomenal rate that you did, at any standard, surely you must have been good enough. Well,
I don't know. I always wonder whether or not I would have been. You know, I don't know. I really don't know. But they always said my left foot was a bit lethal. I scored a lot of goals with it, but I don't know. I mean, going into West Ham and First Division's a different. I think it's a different kettle of fish, but I would like to have tried. I really would.
Mike, can I ask you about your training and what sort of training that you did in those days?
In those days, I trained. You know, as you know, I used to play for Lincoln City, and I played with them for a few years until I broke my leg, and then they put me on the list. But they allowed me, when I was at Grantham, to still train at Lincoln. So you know, we could go down three nights a week, and we had the use of all the facilities in the ground and also the showers and the bath, which was rather nice. So obviously Grantham asked Bill Anderson, who was manager of Lincoln City then, to give me permission to do it. So it was okay. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Mike, do you have any amusing stories from your footballing days?
Well, not that you could print. Not that you could print. We had one or two in, but you know, it's so long ago now. It's a bit difficult. We used to enjoy going away on the bus, and the lads were. We had some rum players playing then, you know. We had some rum players. Alan Clay was quite a character, and we had the. He played for. I can't remember whether it was Wolves, the captain of Wolves before Billy Wright, and he came and he captained Grantham for a year or two, and he was right half. Walter Harrison, that was his name, Wally Harrison, and he was one hell of a player. He gave me more goals on the plate than anyone I've ever played with. He used to say to me, he used to come through and beat him, and he used to say, "There you are," and I used to just go and put it in the net. And a tremendous player, and he was captain, and he played in the cup final. It was between, who was it between? Cup final. Walter Harrison. Leicester. He was captain of Leicester City when they played, can't remember who they were playing in the, was it Wolves? But I think they won 1-1 or 2-1. And he captained Leicester City at Wembley in the cup final. So you can go back and find the year anyway, Ian. I can't remember it. But he came to Grantham, and he was unbelievable player. He put more, all I had to do was tap him in. He was that good a player, and he used to say, "Mike, left, go to the right, here it comes," and when I scored I think I got 70 odd goals that particular season, and I think he must have given me 60. He was a tremendous player. Yeah, Walter Harrison.
Mike, of all the modern day footballers, who would you say most resembles your style of footballing?
Bit difficult, really. They're all better than me, Ian. It would be. So it's been hard to say, because they're all, I mean, all of these lads playing today was far better players than me anyway. But I mean, I just had a flair for goals. But I mean, these people can really play some football. But there's quite a few who I would like to think played my sort of game. But of course, you know, it's a bit different today. This is the thing. But I mean, the one man I always thought was the greatest player I've ever seen in my life was the old Tommy Lawton. I don't think there's anybody ever been here near or far to touch him. He was unbelievable. And I did play with Tommy Lawton in an exhibition game, would you believe, on Lincoln City's ground in Tony Emery's. He was there 6 or 7 years, and it was his what do you call it when you've been there 6 years and you have a
testimonial.
Thank you, Ian. He had a testimonial, and Bill Anderson got some great players down. Inside forward, centre forward, Tommy Lawton came down, and I played inside left to Tommy Lawton. Well, I thought I could play football till these lads came. But tremendous players. Centre half played for us, and I played against him. Billy Wright, Wolves. Not very big, but God, he could jump. I never got a kick. Never got a kick. That's how good I was. Tremendous player, Billy Wright. And I met the Beverleys. Billy Wright and his wife, who was married to Joy Beverley of the Beverley sisters, and they came down, and I met the Beveleys in Lincoln City's room when we'd finished getting bathed and finished and went in to eat, and the Beveleys was there, and the two Bab and was it Babs Beverley, Joy Beverley, and there was two twins anyway, and Billy Wright. And when I played against Billy Wright, I never got a kick. Never got a kick. And I thought to myself, I went home and nearly cried. And I thought to myself, my God, how good have you got to be? Tremendous player.
Mike, would you say that Jack McCartney was probably one of the most influential people on your career?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I was in awe of him. I played for Lincoln City for 2 or 3 years before I went to Grantham Town. And we played Grantham on the... Lincoln City Reserves played Grantham Town on the bank at Central Bank, and Jack was playing, and I'd never seen a centre foot. I mean, and then he was 36 years old, and I've never seen a display played like him. They won 2-1, and Jack scored both their goals. And from that day, I had to play, or try to play, like Jack McCartney. Tremendous player. Not very big, but gosh, he could score some goals. And a nice chap to boot. Very nice chap he was. And I was so honoured when I went to Grantham Town. Grantham Town came to sign me, and Jack McCartney came with Cyril Hatton, who were then the player manager of Grantham, and they signed me on in the Saracen's Head in the High Street in Lincoln. And I couldn't take my eyes off Jack McCartney. He wasn't very big, as you know, he was 5'6", but his goal scoring, and I was so honoured the day I beat his record, his goal scoring record. It was unbelievable. And Jack was the first we were playing at Grantham, and I can't remember who it was against now, and we won 5-1, I scored all 5, and it was the 5th goal that broke Jack McCartney's record, goal scoring record. And I knew it, and Jack got off the trainer's bench and ran all across the pitch and grabbed me. And that was probably the greatest accolade of whatever I did in football, was for him to come to me and hug me because I'd broken his record. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah, I was a great admirer of Jack, and always in awe of him. But to break his record was something else. Yeah, it was tremendous.
Mike, do you have a most memorable goal that you scored? Of all the goals that you scored, was there a memorable moment?
I don't know really. It would be at Grantham Town. It would be at Grantham. I think I don't know. I think probably it was in one of the cup ties, and I think we were getting beat 2. I can't remember who it was against. It was at Grantham. We were getting beat 2-0, and in the last 28 minutes I'd scored 3, and I remember Cyril Hatton jumping up, nearly ran out of the ground. Cyril did, and the crowd would be 4,000 or 5,000 there. And that was a great day. But I had some great times at Grantham. We had a good side, and they laid goals on for me. It was easy to score with them. They were great players. Cyril Hatton, ex-Queen's Park Rangers, now captain, and also Terry Sewell. Terry Sewell came from Notts County, or Nottingham Forest, I should say. And he just used to lay them on. I had to tap them in. He was a great player. We had a good side. The Longworth boys. Jimmy Longworth and Billy Longworth, outside right and outside left, quite characters. Yeah, we had a good side actually. We never won the league, but was always about halfway.
Alright, can I move on to ask you about modern day football, and what do you think to the standard of football today?
I think the standard of football is very good. I think it's very high. The only thing is that I think all ex-professional footballers think about is, and I'm no exception, I think they get too much money, and I wish I was there with them.
Mike, what do you think to all the foreign players that are playing in the English game today?
Well, I think it's really bad in one sense that we haven't got any English players who are good enough to take some of these people's places. But these lads come across here, and there really are some super players. And I think probably they've boosted the first division, second division matches up, because I don't think we've got a lot of players can touch them for skill. This is the thing, Ian. So I suppose, as time goes on, you get these different people coming into football, and I think it's probably good for the game. I think it's probably good.
Mike, thank you very much indeed. Very much appreciate your time and
thanks for your time. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and telling us all about your stories and everything. It's been fantastic to see you again.
I'd like to tell some more one day with you.
Betty Elmer and I invited Chris Gardner to Gravity to share some of his memories. Chris played his first genuine competitive game for the Grantham Club in the 1968-69 season after taking over the goalkeeping role from John Small. Chris spent over 25 years at the top of Grantham's list of record appearance makers. August 2005 saw Chris return to the club for the Legends Day, with many former players returning for a reunion. Other than football, Chris was also a reputable cricketer, winning a Daily Mirror award for performances in the Hague Cup.
My name's Chris Gardner. I used to keep goal for Grantham Town. I signed on for Grantham in 1966, I think it was. Terry came out to Colesworth, where I was playing centre forward for Colesworth and keeping goal for Beedon Park on the Sunday. Took some persuading to play, and in the end I thought I might as well sign on and give it a go, playing for the reserves. It'll be all right. When I got down to with him training and that, I didn't like the training much because it was too hard for me, not being semi-professional. And he'd got John Small there at the time, who he'd got from Hartlepool, so I thought it'd be all right, a few games in the reserves and see how it goes. But when it comes to the first match of the season, I was in the first team, and a bit frightened, to be honest. And we was kicking in before the match, and the whole first team were there, and I can always remember Keith Alexander hit a ball in, just practising. I went up to catch it, swerved, come down, jammed it between my arms and top of my head. Thought, oh, crikey, if I've got to face her, then what I'm going to do. And from then on, Terry come and give me confidence. And he always said, if you want the ball, you shout and go for it. If they're in your way, you hit them, you injure them, it's their fault. And told to get out of the way. We went on from then, we kept winning the Midland League matches. And then it seemed we were doing it pretty regular. And after 1 year, I can't quite remember the year, we decided to go into the Southern League. But before going in there, Terry thought he'd have a meeting with us because there was such a lot of travelling to do all over the country, and we've been down motorways then that it was going to take a long while to get some of these places. And we had the meeting and we had a vote and decided to give it a go. I remember the first match was away to Stevenage Town, who were now Football League, and we beat them 1-0. And we kept going on in that, and we won it, and we got into the Premiership, which was, I think, Southern League Premier then, which is now the conference as well, because it was Northern Premier and Southern Premier, but they amalgamated. And we had a lot of travelling to do, and I think Terry had a word with the people in charge, the chairman and directors. They said, if you want the best out of this team, we've got some lot of travelling to do. We're going to have to have some overnight stops, such as down at Maidstone, Dover, Yeovil, Weymouth, all there, and they agreed to it. So we used to go away on a Friday night to these matches, and there used to be some strange things go on. We weren't allowed a drink for the match, and we was playing Yeovil, I think it was, this night, and we was down there. We all went for pictures. The four of us thought, if we get back quick before they do, we can get a drink, we'd be all right. Well, we hung at the back, took shortcuts back to the hotel. When we got there, Fred Eilert was there. They'd left him there, so if anybody got back early, they couldn't have a drink. So we thought, well, waste time doing all this. So we see the porter and ask him if he'd bring us up 4 bottles of beer to Colin Thompson's room. So we all went up there playing cards, and they brought the bottles of drink, and we sat in there drinking. We knew they were back, so we could hear them downstairs, and all of a sudden there were raps on the door, and we thought it was Terry. So with that, with the beer was away, Jimmy Jackson, he'd picked his up, and Colin's case was there with his clothes, and he slung it in and the lid down. So then the stomach, his clothes were absolutely covered in beer. Another time we stopped in Salisbury, I think it was on the way down to Yeovil or Bath down there, and we got 2 new players coming. They were twins from Leicester, the Capewell twins, and we got downstairs there, we were all talking. Of course, you kept them down there, and I think it was Ernie and Bob. They went upstairs, got the key, up in the room, cleaned everything out of the room, all the lot, got the boots and tied them up to the lights, and when they went to get to bed, there was nothing in the room. The beds had been took out and everything. They were outside, and the boots were just hanging from these lights, and there didn't a lot to do. But several things like that, even I used to share with Jimmy. We've been back to our room, and we've got there, and there's been the mattresses and everything outside.
Well, I know that Grantham Town, the Gingerbreads, had very successful seasons in the early 1970s, but I know that the Gingerbreads had a very successful run in the FA Cup, which culminated in a splendid, famous match, which I think will stick in many people's memories, when they played Middlesbrough, and Chris was in goal for Grantham Town. So I would like to ask Chris, can he talk us through that FA Cup run, particularly the Middlesbrough game?
Well, it's a long while ago. It's a job to remember everything, but when we had to be there an hour before the match, to make sure everybody was there before that, to make sure the whole team was ready. We used to go into the dressing room, sit there. They used to bring us a big pot of tea, and we always used to sit down at the pot of tea, and we all got ready. One or two were a bit nervous, but really, it's a job to get nervous when it's something like, because outside you could just hear all the noise, and then the ref used to come in and just check your boots and make sure everything was okay. But you're just joking and winding each other up and that before you went out of it, which made things easy. When you ran out onto the pitch, and all them people used to get about 1,800, 1,600 there, and there's 6,000, 7,000, and it seemed definitely that you came running out onto the pitch. And early on in the match, I can remember Brent Horrobin hit the post in about the first 2 or 3 minutes. It makes you wonder if it had been just that on the side that bit. You're sort of in awe of the sort of people you were playing against, and the manager who was there, that he would mix in, that came on, shook your hands. There was no Edgerton, Graham, Souness and everybody, and a lot of international side. There's no nastiness said when you went. For some players, if you went out and you clattered them, they'd get a bit narky, but these weren't. They're quite all right.
Brent Horrobin came to Gravity to chat with us, former Notts County player who also had trials with Nottingham Forest and then joined Scunthorpe United, played with the likes of Kevin Keegan and Ray Clemens at the old showground. Brent then came to Grantham and scored on his debut in the October 1967 Midland League game against Long Eaton United. After the 1974-75 season, Brent became player-manager at Melton Town, taking them to the league title success, but he came back to London Road for 2 more seasons with the Gingerbreads. His final goal for the club came in April 1978 against Dover, with his last game in the season's closing fixture against Minehead. Brent helped form Melton Mowbray Football Club, and he still lives near Melton, coaching tennis for several of the sports clubs in the area.
Brent Horrobin here, ex-Gingerbread, over a 10-year spell from 1966 to 1976, and was lucky enough to be involved in what I'm very proud to be called one of the Super Reds, following some superb seasons of playing what I consider to be attractive football, and culminated in a superb FA Cup match against Jackie Charlton's Middlesbrough, where we were unlucky to go down 2-0.
You've got an excellent scrapbook here, Brent. Loads of pictures, different players, and we've got one here, a Grantham team which made history.
Yes, well, I'm looking at photos here, and there's lots of people who don't realise how close we were to success that day against Jack Charlton's team. And I'm looking at one photo here with Irish international goalkeeper, Middlesbrough's keeper Platt, who's on his knees with Bob Norris, side-footing a ball against the post at a great rate of knots. It actually came flying out of the area, and they're 2 very good strikers, Armstrong and Mills, who used to be England as well. They broke away and scored, and suddenly the option of being 1-0 up became we were 1-0 down. And as Mr. Clough used to say, a goal can be scored in a second, and that's exactly what happened to us that day. I think that was a big turning point on that particular match. But having said that, I still think we played our part in what was a superb match at London Road. Rochdale, we played at home, and we drew 1-1, so we were forced to replay, which from the players' point of view we felt great. Probably from the management point of view and director's point of view it was a bit of a problem, because it meant more expense. But we arrived at Rochdale, snow covered pitch, Jack Charlton and Bobby Charlton sitting in the stands, and by half time we were 3-0 down.
3-1, wasn't it?
Was it?
3-1.
Yeah. Mick
3-1.
Chambers scored just before half time to make it 3-1.
Yeah.
And Mick Chambers,
Scored 3.
of all people, scored a hat-trick. Right foot, left foot and a header. You couldn't have a more perfect hat-trick than that. That's a player's dream. Bob Norris and myself, and I was lucky enough to score the 5th with my left foot, which a lot of people know I didn't use a lot. So for me, from my point of view, and I've got to say, the well-wishers, when I arrived back in Melton Mowbray the next day, everywhere, everybody in my firm, everybody, the noise level of everybody banging their machines and whatever, there was a tremendous feel towards Grantham at that time, despite not being Grantham people, and that's what I'll always remember. And the spectators, that it gave them such a lot to cheer about. We had a number of spectators that followed us all over the country, and I'll never forget those people, because it must have cost them quite a lot to travel, but that was the spirit I think we engendered. But more, what I was so pleased about was the manner in which we played football. I think the fact that Terry Bly assembled us with local players from in and around Grantham, we're very, very lucky. We probably had the best non-league manager at that time, so I think that was lucky. But he was lucky in as much that he brought us together. You know, ex-reserve players with Forest and places like that. Ernie Nixon came, and Bob Norris came, then Peter Thompson came, Colin Thompson as we call him, you know, Andy Crawford came, and we just gelled. And we played attacking football.
Terry Bly's idea was, if we was 3-0 down, we could score 4. We'd got enough up front to score goals, hadn't we, in them days?
Yes.
Yeah, we could score. Yeah. There wasn't many times, though, we was behind, though, was there? If we got in front, we won. It was as simple as that.
We had 3 seasons in the 70s where we topped 100 goals each season, going from winning the Midland League, Cup and League double, then into the Southern Division 1 North, which we won with 100 goals, 113 goals that year in particular, and then first year in the Southern Premier Division, which at that time was arguably next to the Football League, and we were runners up to Dartford. They got 57 points, I think we got 49, but we got 70 goals that year. You know, so that was the way we played, but it was the characters within that team for me. We had Chris Gardner in goal, brave as a lion, really quiet, you know, would dive at anything, arguably the best non-league keeper at the time. We had people like Jerry Taylor, who would sit for away matches. He sat on the bus and he read, and you would have thought he was Einstein. It must be the amount he read. But once he got onto the pitch, my God, I think he would have kicked his granny. I would not have liked him marking me. I hated him marking me in training. He used to go boo to me and make me jump, you know. But I would wanted him in my side. I would have had him in any day. If I'd have been the manager, I would have had him. Andy Crawford, who we called Crowfoot because of his left foot. We used to hook it round the ball. Jimmy Bloomer came all the way from Cleethorpes to play for us and played at Grimsby. Ronnie Harrison, who you know from Grantham, you know, soul to the earth, you know, I would trust him with my kiddies, no problem. Then we were lucky enough to have Mickey Chambers, who'd come through the reserves in the middle of the park, but there Terry made his clever move. He brought Colin Thompson back from Peterborough to play for us, and we were all a bit wary, wondered whether he'd like coming non-league after playing league and whatever, but he added a little bit of icing on the cake. He arrived in the penalty area onto ball from nowhere. He just arrived, and you thought, well, I don't know where he came from, and he always stabbed it in from about 3 or 4 yards, and he became the captain. He did it very delicately, you know. He knew when to tell you to pull your finger out proverbially, and so on. And then up front, well, what can you say? You got Dennis Benskin, very fast. I'd been at Notts County with him in the reserves and the A side. Bit of a jack the lad, always up to mischief, but really, really fast, really talented, and a tremendous shot. And then obviously Bob and Ernie, the twin strike duo, who were constantly trying to outdo each other, you know, who could get the most goals. If Ernie thought Bob had taken one of his goals, he would let him know in no uncertain terms. Ernie was such a character, and bless him, he called me George, for George Best all through we played together. I called him Dennis, as in Dennis Law, and that's how we spoke to each other all through his time at Grantham, and we just hit it off straight away. Bob Norris was, well, he was so skillful, and those two used to get about 30 goals. Bob also Redmayne and Todd, and he got me to Grantham really in the end, because he encouraged me to be there, because for the first part of my career at Grantham I used to have to be picked up by other players. I didn't drive till very late, so every time I drive to Grantham along that way into Grantham, I'm thinking about Grantham Football and London Road. I can't get it out yet. I can just think of the journeys. But when you talk about Jack the lads, we got to a situation where just off the pitch, right, you would not dare go out the changing room first. We got to such a state where we couldn't go out the changing room first, because if you did, by the time you got back after the match, your underpants had been cut, your ties had been cut in half, your toes had been cut off, your socks, so when you pulled them on, they shot up your legs, right? And Norris and Benskin, and then Ernie got involved sometimes. You had Algepan in your underpants. And this is where we go back to the trainer with Terry Bly. Pim Taylor was wonderful, because I nicknamed him Potter, out of Please Sir, the caretaker in Please Sir, who said he'd been a desert rat and all that, because he used to get hold of his tie, and we'd do things, as we've just said, and he would stand there behind Terry saying, they're like bloody kids. They're like bloody kids. You've got to sort them out, Terry. And he used to get really, really upset, and we'd be absolutely howling. On away trips, and I kid ye not, when we'd go to Weymouth and places like that, stay overnight. We arrived at one hotel, and Terry and Pim always used to go to their room last. They'd see everybody in their rooms and whatever, and this one particular, all I have this vision of is I'm looking down this hallway and I just keep seeing furniture going across this corridor. Bed, wardrobe, sideboard, everything, and then all the doors close. And Terry and Pim then go to their room, and all we hear is bloody big kids. He said, you've got to talk to me. And anyway, everybody climbed out the windows and went round. We all met in the lounge.
Hello, I'm Peter Mogridge, and I've been watching Grantham since 1947. Dad used to play for Torquay, that's where we come from, and I've watched them since 1947. Seen some good matches, seen some bad matches. We had some really good cup matches when Terry Bly come in 64, 65, and he lasted 14 years. And in them 14 years, I think 10 years, we was in the second round of the cup nearly every year, to Bradford City, Rotherham, Port Vale, and different places like we had Oldham twice, Swindon twice. As Brent says, we went to Rochdale in the snow when the electric people was on strike, and we had to play Wednesday afternoon in the snow, about a foot of snow at Rochdale, wasn't there? And then we finished up with Middlesbrough, with Jack Charlton and his brother. We had a few words with them. We had a weekend in Cardiff. We played Barrytown on the 30th of the 3rd and Merthyr on the 31st of the 3rd. So it was a Saturday and a Sunday, and I met one of the best footballing people in the world, John Charles, didn't we, Brent? And he had been to it, he played for Leeds, hadn't he? Played for Leeds, sure, and he'd been to Italy, and he'd come back to Cardiff, and I was in the army then down Bristol, and I went to see him when he come back from Cardiff. He played for Merthyr. He was a real nice chap, same as Terry Bly. If Terry Bly was about now, you wouldn't have no trouble. You won't have no trouble at all. He was a real nice bloke. You won't need a police force, because it was a gentleman. It was as simple as that. When I was a lad and with Terry Bly, he used to let me go on the bus for nothing, because I used to help him. I used to run the club shop and sell a few programmes and earn Brent's wages and that. And he just used to say, come on, we're going on the bus, and we'd go, and that was it. We'd up and down the country, Minehead, Weymouth, Dover, Margate, all over the place, and then north, weren't we, Brent?
Brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant it was. We had some good days out, yeah.
Mike, whilst we were looking at this scrapbook of Brent's, you remembered something about your early days as a spectator.
Yeah, the nuclear bunker. As a little cadet at the Red Cross. Joined the Red Cross so we could watch Grantham play for free. We didn't have to pay. And I'm looking at these photographs now, and I remember Percy Taylor, who used to be in charge there, and we used to sit there snuggled up in the bunker, watching the lads running up and down the field, Not many injuries, was there, lads? Really? They were clean players. And they didn't lay on the floor and pretend like prima donnas that they were hurt or shout and squeal. They just got up and got on with the game. The guys never had any pads either, so if you got kicked on the shins, that hurt. Looking at these photographs though, Alan, when you look back at it, do you remember the trees at the back, guys? You know those line...
I hit those a few times. Yes.
What, you actually kicked it out of touch?
Well, if I ever hit the trees at the back, I hit one over the bar, yeah, that's when usually people would shout, "Stop on your wing, Horrobin."
Did you have a spare ball? Because I remember a lot of the time the ball used to go flying out onto London Road and we all used to stand around here waiting for it to get back in again. So did you have a spare?
Yeah, we usually have one or two. Bob Norris usually supplied those to Terry. So, I don't think the club had a lot.
No, but you'll also remember the pitch. It wasn't level, was it?
No, no.
It actually ran down, didn't it?
Yeah,
so
all the way.
Was that in your favour?
Well, when you're kicking that way, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
But as I say, Brent used to finish
If
up
you remember when
in
we
the
played
allotment.
Worcester City, in the Worcester City Echo, there was a little cartoon caption that showed Sherpas and goats pulling the Worcester City team up a hill at Grantham and making references to the slope at Grantham, how they didn't like it.
Yes.
Because in that particular match, they'd actually signed, just prior to us playing them, Jerry Hitchens, who had just come back from Torino in Italy, so a former England centre forward and still in his prime, but he hadn't chosen to join a league club, so he turned out for Worcester City. And as I've just commented, he was one of 4 former England centre forwards we played against, with obviously Jimmy Greaves, Derek Kevin, and latterly was Sir Geoff Hurst, the World Cup winner. So from my point of view, very, very honoured to play against people who've been my heroes.
Did you get to talk to these guys and get some stories from them? Did they give you any tips and advice when you were in the changing rooms at half time, or at the end of the match? Did you actually get to meet your heroes and have a chance to talk to them?
Well, we talked to quite a few folks, didn't we? You say,
Yeah.
especially Terry Bly and that, and Jerry Hitchens and the Welshman.
Well, John Charles.
Yeah.
I spent the whole
Yeah.
match watching him.
Yeah.
I used to get told off every week. Every time a John Charles or a Derek Kevin or a Geoff Hurst played against us, I would usually be told off by Terry at half time from the point of view, have you got his autograph? Have you seen enough of him yet, Brent?
When you all played, it was about characters. The fans went to see you, they enjoyed it, they loved it. It was about families, wasn't it? And every week that stadiums and that would be full, wouldn't they? Did you feel that support when you were playing and the crowds behind you lifting you to play better?
Well, down London Road you was right up to the touchline, weren't you, Brent? You know, everybody, there was an old lady there with an umbrella who used to stand down the side of London Road, and if the referee made a mistake, she was on the pitch with her umbrella.
I remember them telling me about that, but you,
Maybe that was before,
you did feel a close proximity to the
Oh,
supporters, and when they were behind you, there was such a good feel, and no trouble.
Well, we were only about 2 foot away from you at times,
yeah,
weren't we?
There was no red cards, nobody was sent off in them days.
No.
It was just a good game of football.
I'm here today with Brian Morley, and he's going to tell me about Terry Bly.
Well, I first met Terry in October 1964. At that time, Grantham Football Club was managed by Jimmy Rayner. Well, he was transferred to Notts County. Well, Terry played for Notts County, and he came in the opposite direction to manage Grantham Football Club. There was a 4-figure sum involved.
Who did Terry make his debut against for Grantham?
Well, it was in a Midland League game against Retford Town. Grantham won that day 2-1, with Terry scoring the winning goal in the last 3 minutes. I was playing on the right wing at the time, and you could tell that Terry was a good player. On that day, he played centre forward. Terry played for Norwich City, Peterborough United, Coventry City and Notts County.
Did he score many goals, Brian?
He got 31 for Norwich City, 81 for Peterborough United. Coventry City he scored 26, and then he got transferred to Notts County and he scored 4 goals in 29 appearances. While he was playing at Peterborough United, he set a Football League record in the 4th Division of 52 goals, which was never beaten. Still a record. In 1959, Norwich City reached the semi-final of the FA Cup, and they played Luton Town and lost 2-1. On the way to getting to the semi-final, they beat Spurs and Manchester United. When I had a conversation with Terry and talked about it in that semi-final game, he said to me he played again a man named Sid Owen, centre-half. He says, do you know, Nip, he says, I never had a kick all game, and he was an old man at the time.
3 members of Terry Bly's family: his daughter Karen, his son-in-law Andrew, and his wife Mrs. Glenda Bly.
Hi, I'm Karen. Dad enjoyed success in the early 70s. Grantham were playing teams in higher leagues and winning cups. Jackie Charlton brought Middlesbrough to London Road, exciting fans who were really behind Grantham at this winning time. There was a buzz around the town and the footballing community were having a great time. Players were also enjoying themselves on the pitch and as good friends. We all, players and their families, had a fantastic holiday in Magaluf. Memories of Brent Horrobin taking off Mick Jagger in a bar full of people clapping, and Dad playing table tennis at the hotel against George Graham, Arsenal manager. Lovely memories. I think the team spirit of these lovely people created success and happiness, and I know it was a special time for Dad and us as a family.
Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm Terry's son-in-law, aka always known as Duffer, because whatever sport me and Terry played, did he always beat me. But one thing I did have for Terry was respect, and as the players at Grantham Town and a lot of other people that knew him always knew him as Billy, in great admiration of his hero Bill Shankly.
On behalf of Mrs. Glenda Bly, I should like to tell you that after Terry's football career, he became a director of Playmore Sport in Grantham for many years. Terry brought so much love and laughter to so many people, especially to all his family.
Well, I'm Pat Nixon. I'm the secretary of Grantham Town Football Club. Had the job for 25 years. First got involved helping the club on a voluntary basis, and then a bit out of the blue really. The chairman at the time, Tony Balfe, asked me if I'd help the club out by becoming the secretary. Took the job on initially just on a short-term basis, and after 25 years I'm still here doing it. Began all those years ago under Martin O'Neill as the team manager, and as most people will know, Martin's gone on to manage some of the best teams in the country: Aston Villa, Leicester City, Celtic, and he's currently at Sunderland. Since then I've worked with 23 different managers, several chairmen, and basically just had a great time doing the job. I've seen most of the things that happen in non-league football: championships, relegations, financial crises, the lot really. My job at the club is to look after the football side of things, the football administration, and that involves anything to do with the team, writing contracts for players, signing players, organising football matches, dealing with the Football Association and the various leagues and competitions that we play in. It's a voluntary job, do it in my spare time. It's something I love doing, so the hours that I put in are not a problem really, I just love it.
Have your children followed in your footsteps? Are they involved in the club?
Not really. My wife was at one time a football fan, and we both used to go and watch Leicester City years ago, before I got involved in Grantham, that was. She comes to the odd game, my wife does, but doesn't really get involved. I've got 2 daughters, so they've not really got involved, but I've now got a couple of grandsons, and one of them is very keen on football. Very keen indeed, and he's looking to, he's 9 years old, and he's looking to get into a team at the moment.
In the 25 years that you've been involved, Pat, do you think you've got a finest moment? Is there something that sticks in your mind?
It's very difficult because there's been a lot of good moments. Obviously winning championships
is a great feeling, and I've done that twice with the club. Getting promoted is another fantastic feeling. If I was to look back over 25 years, and I've been asked this question many times, I think the highlight for me would be when we reached the first round proper of the FA Cup, and we played Ashton United from the Manchester area in the fourth qualifying round. That's the round before the first round proper, and we'd won the game, and we stood in the social club and watched the draw for the first round proper live on TV, and to see Grantham's name come out to say Grantham Town will play Leyton Orient, who were in the and still are in the Football League. Fantastic moment for me, that was. And then the next day to get a phone call from the FA to say that our game was going to be on Match of the Day, in front of the Match of the Day cameras. I think that's a highlight for me of 25 years. The club at the moment is undergoing a lot of change in all aspects, but we're looking at the moment to have a youth section within the club where we'll have teams at all age groups, from sort of under 10s through to under 18s, and hopefully they will feed through eventually into the senior teams, and that's the way we're looking, and that's the way we'll do it. And they'll be local lads. Hopefully they'll be local lads. Yeah, I mean, if there are any people that feel they want to or get involved in the youth section at the club, you can call club or myself and get involved. We're just setting this section up at the moment, so it'll be a good opportunity for any youngsters that feel that they want to get involved. We will, as I understand it, be holding some open days and some trial days for people to get involved, so just watch out in the press for when they happen as well.
You're also called the Gingerbreads, aren't you?
We are. We've always been known as the Gingerbreads for as long as I can remember, and I've been involved with the town as secretary for 25 years. I've been a supporter all my life, really, and they've always been the Gingerbreads, and it is because of the connection with Grantham Gingerbread. That's the link.
Can anybody come and watch a game?
Oh yeah, I mean, we're a semi-professional football club, so there is an admission charge. We have to run the football club, but yeah, the more the merrier, and there's lots of good deals at the moment. Children getting in free and families getting in at reduced price. Just listen to Gravity F, find out the details. I'd just like to say, to finish off really, that the football club has undergone a lot of change this season. We've got new chairman, we've got new management, and it has been a time of change, and we've taken a bit of time to adapt to that change, but the club is going in the right direction. It needs the support of the town, and all of the town really, and I'd just ask people to get behind the club and support it, come to the games. I'm sure you'll enjoy it if you do. It's a great atmosphere, and a good afternoon out.